talk, my speech today is based on my own personal experience. It's not just based on clients, it's based on my own experience. So I've experienced domestic abuse and I know what it can do to an individual. But I also want to talk about the experience that the experience I see with other women over the years, what they go through and how they now need to understand that there is a way out of this. I'm aware in our community, we don't talk about it. There's what we call the silence of domestic abuse, and that's what I call it, where we do not talk about it within our community. So a lot of women are suffering behind closed doors. I'm hoping this session would enlighten people to be aware of the civil processes available to them if they wish to take that way forward. It can be very traumatic for a woman, and I try to help women when I do the pro bono work, which means free work when I give advice that I give to women. And I'll just give a brief summary. I think it has already been mentioned in this talk, but I'll give a brief summary as to how serious this is. In the UK in 2019, there were 1.6 million incidences of domestic abuse. That's really high, and it would have gone up obviously during the lockdown. The World Health Organization says 1 in 3 women experience domestic abuse. That's 1 in 3 women. Research also shows that women between the ages of 16 and 24 are 3 times more likely to experience domestic abuse. I think the fact is, I think this has been mentioned already, it could be anybody. It could be a close friend, it could be a neighbor, it could be anybody. Domestic abuse does not discriminate. It doesn't look at a particular person, it can happen to anybody. No matter your race, your religion, your education, your qualification, your socioeconomic background. People think, oh, it can't happen to me. It can happen to anybody. Some think it only happens to women. I think, as Sister Tutu said, it doesn't just happen to women, it happens to men. 85% of the cases are women from research, but 15% of this is men, and they don't come forward. I think today I'll be more focused on the women's aspect, because most of the clients I do get are women in the Women's Centre. It happens in an intimate, interdependent, long-term relationship in our families and in our homes, which is the last place where you want to see violence. If no action is taken, it will go on and on until the person ends up being killed. And I think that's the saddest part of it. If people don't seek help through the legal means, they could find themselves dead. And it's such a sad scenario. Going forward, I've got a clip that I want to share. And I often share this whenever I do this talk, just to make it a bit more real before I go into the civil litigation processes that you can go through.
Hey guys, welcome back to my vlog. I got flowers today. No, it's not my birthday or anything special like that. We had an argument last night, and he said a lot of cruel things that really hurt my feelings, but I guess he's sorry because he got me these flowers today. I got flowers today. No, it's not our anniversary or any other special day. Last night he threw me into a wall. And choked me. And then beat me till I passed out. I woke up bloody and bruised all over. It was actually a nightmare. I guess he is sorry though, because I got these flowers today. I got flowers today. No, it's not Mother's Day or any other special day. Last night he beat me again and again and again. It was worse, much worse than any other day before. He wanted to sleep with me, and I'm on my period, so I wasn't up for it. A couple of kicks, punches to the face, and he had his way. I got flowers today. And today is actually a very special day. It's the day of my funeral. Last night he beat me to death. If only I had the courage and the strength to leave him, maybe I wouldn't have gotten flowers today.
Thank you for that. I think the clip is self-explanatory. I don't think I need to say much. It actually does put tears in my eyes whenever I watch it, and it gives me chills. I think the point I'm going to make here is when a woman finally decides she wants to leave the relationship where there's been domestic abuse, it takes one final blow, one realization that she will be killed or he will kill her. That's the saddest part of it. It's the most dangerous stage for that woman. And I remember Tutu saying that, why don't they go to the police? The reality is a lot of women don't feel that safe by going to the police, especially as Black women. It's not something we do, and it's something that will be frowned upon in our community. So it becomes a very scary place where the woman wants to leave the man but doesn't think she's got the protection. At least 70% of domestic violence deaths, as we saw in that clip, are happen at the stage when the woman wants to leave the man. Because as the relationship ends, the perpetrator begins to think that they cannot live without that person, that no one else will have that person, and they will deal with that person the way they see fit. Once the individual has decided to leave and has made that clear to the individual, to the perpetrator, then the problems start. The victim needs to seek help at that stage, and she needs the protection. And that's the protection of the law. Without that, she's putting herself in trouble. There are two types of orders that can be made. Now, these are civil orders. You'll have to go to the civil court, they're not criminal. And I think a lot of women aren't aware that they could go through these particular models. I think Tutu mentioned it as well in her talk. That's non-molestation order was the one she mentioned, which is an injunction. And there's also what you call an occupation order. Now, non is an order used to prevent the perpetrator from harming the person. In order to apply for a non-molestation order, you need to either be married or be cohabiting with the person, have lived or lived with the person in the same household. You both have parental responsibility or are parents of a child, which means you have children in the family. You make this application, and you can make this application free of charge by the court. But the difficulty with this is, in order to do this, a lot of women do not know that they will possibly need some kind of legal guidance to fill out the form. And solicitors' fees can be very expensive. So a lot of them can go to different centres, women's centres, different domestic abuse centres, where they can get free legal advice, and law centres, so that they can assist them in making these kind of applications. So I think a lot of women need to be aware that it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg to get this order done, if you can get free legal advice that you need, which is something that I do and a lot of other women do in different centres. The court will grant the order prohibiting the perpetrator from molesting or harming the person. But the order will not only cover that, it will also cover protect the person from being stalked. It will protect their children. It will protect them from being abused on social media, or from the perpetrator using a third party to communicate with them to cause a lot of insult, a lot of pain to the person. It would also stop email communication. The order can also stop the person from going to the school to remove the children, which is another fear that women have as well. When they're in domestic abuse situations, they've got to think about the children. And the problem is, they are worried that they will lose their children if they go to the police or they go to court. But that's not always the case. A non-molestation order can be used for that purpose. In order to get the order, you need to show to the court that you're in imminent danger. So you need to be in danger time. You cannot say 6 months ago, I'm in danger. You need to be in imminent danger. You are in fear of your life. And if you're in fear of your life, you can try and get this order. You will also let the court know that if you have children, that the children are also likely to be victims of domestic abuse, either just by witnessing it or also by being in that particular environment and watching it going on. The fact is, you need to show that it's a genuine need of protection, and then the court will consider your application. When you file this application, you also need to do a witness statement. And again, this is something that was raised in the previous talk that was given by Tutu, where she said witness statements are very important, evidence is very important. In this particular instance, if you want to get this order, you need to do a witness statement. And this witness statement will give a history of all the events that you have been through under domestic abuse with that particular partner. You will give a history to the court and let the court know how serious it is. At the same time, any written evidence would also assist your application to the court, and you can give what's known as exhibits. So you will if you have letters from social services where the children have been involved, where you've reported the matter to the police and they've referred it to social services, you could have a crime reference number when you've reported the matter to the police as well. You can also get a third party who can give a witness evidence if they have witnessed the offence. So it's important that if you're in a domestic abusive situation, you need to keep a log on all that is going on. You might not be able to do the order immediately, but you have to plan it well, and you can put all your ducks in order to make sure you get this order so you can get this person to stop abusing you. I will refer to occupation order in a minute. You need to show to the court that your life is at risk and that of any child. This application will be filed, and this is possibly a bit of a protection for the women at the beginning. If a woman decides she wants to make this application, she'll have to do it in what you call an urgent application, an ex parte application, which is without notice. That means that the person that you are taking the application against, the perpetrator, will not know at the beginning that you are going to court. So you have that type of protection already. So you can go to court, file an application on a day, and a judge will hear the case on the day. Unfortunately, with COVID, the situation is slightly different. Because of COVID, the courts are under a lot of pressure. So what has been happening, and from the experience I've had with my clients, is they could file the application, and a week or two later, the court will call them and either advise them that they're going to have a telephone hearing, or even a judge can give an order without even having a hearing. And I think this is just in relation to COVID, and possibly it might be the way forward if things are so difficult as life goes on. So what I'm trying to say is you can actually get an order without the perpetrator knowing it. Once you have the order, then it means that you will be able to protect yourself immediately with that particular order. The order can be made for up to 6 months to a year. However, there is the next catch here, is that even though you've got the order, it's a temporary order. The court will not give a permanent order until the other person, which is a perpetrator, has an opportunity to hear, to have their say in the case. So therefore, the court will list the case for another hearing. And that is where the problems can start for the individual. But I'll raise this as I go along. The first thing you need to do when you have the order is that you need to serve it on the individual, and it has to be done by personal service. So once the person has the order and they're in danger, and the courts have said, okay, the person can't touch you, they can't come near you, they can't molest you, you have that order, but you still need to serve it on the individual. So you will either have to get a family member, the police, especially if the police have been involved in the case before and you've reported it to police, or you have to get what they call a process server. They will charge you to serve it on the individual. But once the individual has this order, they cannot touch you. I will explain to you as we go along what the attachments are and what the consequences are. And I think Tutu has already mentioned that in her speech, but I'll go through mine. Once the person has the order will state that there will be a hearing, normally in 14 days' time. Again, with COVID, it could take a bit longer, but you have the protection of the temporary order that stops the person from coming near you, from touching you. The respondent will then have to attend the hearing to defend his position. Some men will attend, some men will not. If they do not attend, the order will be extended automatically, and you will have that order in place for a year. If they do attend, you would have to then face the individual in court or in a telephone hearing, where they will then decide, the court will then decide whether the matter is serious enough for there to be a proper hearing, or whether the court think there's enough evidence to give the order in any event. my experience with respondents, with clients, have been that it has been very scary and very traumatic to go through this. But in the long run, this is a very important stage that a person can reach. If they get to that stage where they get this disorder, they're in a very good place, and they protect themselves and their children. Sometimes it's better for them to have a sitter or a friend in court at the time of the hearing. If they have to go to it and the other side is presented by and the respondent is present, you can ask the court to provide you with protection on the day with security, and you can stay in a room. Obviously, the perpetrator will be angry, and they will show that anger with you in court if they have the way to do so. So you can get the protection from the court at the day of the hearing. While the judges will be there to protect you anyway, and they will cross-examine the perpetrators themselves. Like I said, most of the hearings now are done by the telephone, so it's easier in that way, where you won't have to see the perpetrator, but that won't continue after COVID, after the lockdown. The difficulty you can have, as I said, solicitors can be rather expensive, and so most of my clients go to court by themselves. Now, if the other side is represented and the perpetrator is represented by a solicitor, that could make the application difficult. But so long as you're putting a very good witness statement and evidence to show that you have been suffering in the hands of this individual, you're likely to get the application. Otherwise, you would have to get a solicitor, which could cost you, or you look for free advice, free legal advice, or a Mackenzie friend. It's a friend that can come into court and assist you with the hearing. I have to say that at this stage, the actual victim has to be very strong. If they're not strong, they will fall apart and they won't be able to do it. Now, the benefit of this is once they get the order, the position is the order, if it's granted, it's a contempt of court for the individual, for the perpetrator or the husband to go against this, and they could be imprisoned for up to 5 years, or they could be fined. Now, that is the protection you get when you have this order. When the respondent knows, that is, the man knows that he is likely to go to prison, he is likely to stop touching you, he's likely to stop harming you. He would think twice about it, and that is the protection you get for yourself and your child if you're in that position. The other order that can be granted at the same time is called an occupation order. Now, the non-molestation order is an order that stops the person from touching you. But the difficulty is if you're in a relationship and you're living with your partner and you're saying, don't touch me, they will intimidate you in other ways, as I gave you in the list that I gave before about the kind of things that they will do to you to affect your state of mind and your mental health. So what you can get is what they call an occupation order, which means that the court can also grant an order that stops the individual, that removes the perpetrator from the house permanently. And in which way you could then live in the house by yourself with your children if that is what you want to do. The court can ask the person to leave the house, not to enter an environment, to remain excluded from a defined area of the home so they're not threatening you in any way. In order to do this, the court does have to be very careful as well, because if the partner has nowhere to stay, they have to weigh the odds and look at the position, i.e. the house and needs of the individual, the resources. They'll have to look at the financial resources available, the conduct of the person. So all of this has to be taken into account. But at the same time, if you can get an occupation order together with a non-molestation order, it's a very good order to have. The courts would also look at whether the relationship has already broken down. So where possibly the parties are already thinking of separating, the court will take that into consideration and are likely to grant the order, where they will ask the partner to leave the property in any event. The courts will not give this order automatically, unfortunately, because they have to weigh the rights of the individual, which is the perpetrator as well. And they will give the person an opportunity to speak in court. So you are unlikely to get this order very easily through the courts. Provided you put forward a witness statement together with the non-molestation order witness statement, you are likely to get this order granted by the court. And it's a way forward for women that need to get out of domestic violence without having to go through the criminal process. I mean, the problem we have here is if you don't apply for these orders and you decide to leave a relationship, so you don't go for the non-molestation order, you don't go for the occupation order, you don't get the police involved or the criminal proceedings involved, then you're likely to have a long period of being stalked by the individual. Even if you leave the house, leave the person, they're likely to look for you. They're likely to install devices on your phone to track you. And I've had cases where they're being tracked on their mobile phones. it's likely to result in long custody battles, where the person knows that they can get at you, so they will not agree to a divorce, they will not agree to separation. And then the children are likely to be affected as well. So if you don't have a non-molestation order in place that protects the children, there's a likelihood that the person will then be able to have access to the children and use the children against you. Now, you can imagine if the children are witnessing their mothers being abused, or they've even been beaten themselves, they have no protection at all from the law. So if you don't call the police, and if you don't get the non-molestation order, you don't get the occupation order, you don't leave, you're putting yourself at risk. Also, there's the issue about denial of financial support. There are orders that can be made together with the non-molestation order and the occupation order, where the courts can allow you to get some financial support if the partner who has left refuses to give you that. A lot of partners will manipulate the court system, knowing that you will do nothing. So you will have a long proceedings of divorce because you took no action against them. When women come to me, they decide they want to break that silence. A lot of them have never done that with anybody. And it's important that the person that is experiencing domestic abuse finds someone to talk to, at least a friend at the beginning, and then they seek legal advice. And I say this because without that, a lot of women will not come out of it. My work, where I work in the Women's Centre, I give women a lot of advice, and I think this has been said, in non-molestation or occupation orders. And I do this without any charges because I think it's a must. It's something that needs to happen. But a lot of them end up going through divorce proceedings, and a lot of them end up representing themselves in these cases because they become stronger women after they've been able to face up to the fact that they need to get out of those relationships. I recently heard of a nightmare case where a woman had paid £15,000 of legal assistance to get a non-molestation order. She came to me to tell me her story, and she actually failed. So I think it's not about how much money you spend on it, it's about making sure that you have a good case and your chances of success are good before you actually go into court, and that's essential. I think my time is beginning to run out, so I'm going to quickly round off as much as I can. So I think that the answer to all of this is if you're a victim of domestic abuse, you need to take action for yourself. You need to tell the police, you need to tell social services, you need to tell your neighbour, tell people around you. You need all the support you can get if you're going to file a non-molestation or occupation order. You would also need to ensure that you understand what you're going through and that it's not going to be easy to leave, but you can leave if you really want to. I think this talk is among women, is among people just trying to understand the difficulties that people go through with domestic abuse. We have to keep shining the spotlight on this matter. This topic needs to continue to be spoken so that women can seek the help where they need, in particular in the legal system, where there's protection available for them, as I've mentioned about the non-molestation order and the occupation order. But everybody tries to try and understand that it's also very difficult for women to do so. So they need the support of the community around them. We need to keep talking about it. We need to try and make home a safe place for all mothers, for all children, for all partners. And that's the only way forward. I think that's what I would say in my talk, and I think I'll stop it there so I don't go over my 20 minutes.